In a world spinning faster every day, where technology accelerates and headlines blur the lines between fact and fiction, finding your footing takes courage. Welcome to the Character-Driven Life and Leadership Podcast. Meet Coach Dane Deutsch. He is an Air Force veteran who ran advanced military IT and ARPANET operations overseas in the 1980s, giving him a unique, decades-long perspective on today's technological landscape. Today, he's a professional gymnastics coach, teacher, author, and the creator of the Tricycle Effect at the Leadership and Management Development and Character Academy. Dane believes that character is the ultimate foundation that drives your leadership skills, technical skills, your people skills, and your influence. And meet Kurt. With 15 years of experience working as a consultant in West Africa and a rich background in education, Kurt brings a deep understanding of global history, economics, and biblical principles. He provides the historical context and spiritual grounding needed to navigate today's most overwhelming challenges. Together, they tackle the tough topics, from artificial intelligence and digital surveillance to keeping your family grounded. They are on a mission, searching for truth in a world full of lies. So get ready to grow, develop, and shape the kind of leadership that endures. Let's dive in and trike on. Trike on.
Imagine, just for a second,
Yeah.
that you are staring at a document.
Okay.
It's mysterious, it's dense with all this administrative jargon. And as you hold it up to the light, you spot this faint, blurry watermark stamped right in the background of the page.
Oh, wow. Like a hidden clue.
Exactly. It's this single, almost imperceptible visual clue, right? But spotting it sends you tumbling down this massive rabbit hole. One that connects military lawyers, satellite networks. Get this, a secret space-based financial reset.
Yeah. And today, we are not looking at the plot of some sci-fi spy novel either. We are dissecting a recorded Zoom conversation between two researchers, Dane and Kurt, who actually believe this scenario is our current unfolding reality.
Which is wild.
It really is. They spend this whole recording meticulously analyzing a 3-page document dated August 9th, which they refer to as the War Report.
Right, the War Report. And our mission in this deep dive is to explore exactly how they used artificial intelligence and, deep research to connect some wildly disparate dots.
Between military logistics, space tech, and global finance, yeah.
Exactly. We are looking at the mechanics of their logic, right?
Right.
Tracking how a blurry logo leads to a theory about the fundamental restructuring of human society.
But before we really get into how they connect those dots, there is a crucial disclaimer we need to make for you, the listener.
Yeah, very important.
Because the sources we are examining today contain highly charged political theories. We are talking about claims of systemic election interference, impending military tribunals, and, secret shadow government operations.
Right. Heavy stuff.
So we must explicitly state that we are not taking sides here, and we are absolutely not endorsing these viewpoints.
No, not at all.
Our goal is purely to impartially report on the contents of this conversation. We just want to examine the architecture of their thought process, and understand how Dane and Kurt got from point A to point B.
Right. Because if you're listening to this, you might be wondering how anyone makes the leap from a random memo to a global shadow war.
It is a massive leap.
It really is. So to understand that, we have to establish the lens that Dane and Kurt are looking through before they even read the first word of that August 9th War Report.
Yeah, because their conversation actually starts far away from space or global finance.
Right. It starts with local politics.
Exactly. They open with this palpable, almost overwhelming frustration regarding local elections.
Yeah.
They spend a significant amount of time detailing issues in places like Iron County, for instance.
Right.
They point to inexplicable vote tallies, missing USB sticks that were supposed to hold voter data, and strange patterns of crossover voting during primary races.
I hear that, but local election glitches happen all the time, right?
Sure crap.
Like a missing USB stick usually just means some overworked poll worker made a mistake, not that a shadow government is orchestrating a takeover.
Yeah.
So how do they justify bridging that gap?
Well, they bridge it because they don't view these as isolated administrative errors.
Oh.
Yeah, Kurt outlines this core foundational belief during the call. He says, when you run for office today, you aren't running against a specific political candidate. You're running against the system.
The system itself.
Right. In their worldview, the standard democratic machinery is just hopelessly compromised by deep state actors from the bottom up.
Wow.
So because they start with the assumption that the traditional voting apparatus is rigged and, unfixable, they logically conclude that a conventional political victory is impossible.
Which leaves what?
Well, to them, therefore, a military intervention becomes the only viable mechanism left to just wipe the slate clean.
See, that changes the entire calculus of how you interpret information.
Completely.
If I hand you a memo from a government office, your baseline assumption is that it's just bureaucratic paperwork.
Right. A boring memo.
But because Dane and Kurt operate under the assumption that a military reset is literally the only remaining option, they don't read this 3-page war report as an administrative memo.
No, not at all.
They read it as a literal operational blueprint for an imminent, localized shadow war. Like they are actively hunting for confirmation of an event they already believe is in motion.
Exactly. And that hunt for confirmation is what brings us to the visual clue you mentioned at the beginning.
So watermark.
The watermark, yeah. Dane notices this faint military logo stamped on the pages of the war report, but he can't quite identify which specific branch or department it belongs to.
Right, it's blurry.
Yeah. So to solve this, he turns to an AI, specifically Google Gemini.
And the masterclass the AI provides is where the dot connecting just hits hyperspeed.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because military space operations are notoriously dense and, full of overlapping jurisdictions.
It's an alphabet soup.
Right. So the AI breaks down 3 distinct, yet very easily confused entities for Dane.
Okay, lay them out for us.
So first, there is the United States Space Force, or the USSF. This is the overarching military branch itself. And the AI describes its logo really carefully. It's an upward-pointing delta, a Polaris star representing a guiding light, and a dark blue background symbolizing outer space.
Upward delta, dark blue background. Got it. That's the main branch.
Second, you have the Space Operations Command, or SPOC.
SPOC.
Yeah, SPOC. This is a primary field command operating within the Space Force.
Okay.
And its logo is entirely different. It features a platinum border, 3 red arrows pointing upward, and specific constellations.
So that's like a specialized unit within the branch.
Exactly. And third, there is U.S. Space Command, or U.S. Spacecom. This is what's known as the Combatant Command.
Combatant Command, okay.
Yeah, and the AI points out that its logo features a bald eagle holding an olive branch, a globe showing orbits, and an arc of 4 stars.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, because the AI doesn't just give Dane a trivia lesson on logos.
No, it goes way deeper.
It explains a fundamental rule of how the U.S. military operates. And Dane actually uses a racing analogy to make sense of this bureaucracy, which I love.
It's a great analogy.
The rule is this. Military branches themselves do not fight wars. Combatant commands do.
Right.
So if we use Dane's racing analogy, the overarching branch, so the Space Force is the factory.
The factory, yeah.
They build the cars, they hire the mechanics, and they train the pit crews.
The factory prepares the assets, but they don't take the car out onto the track on race day.
Right. The Space Command to Combatant Command with the bald eagle logo is the driver.
Got it.
So when it is time to actually engage in a conflict or fight a war, the driver borrows the cars and the crews from the factory and takes them out to the track.
Makes perfect sense.
But here's the crux of the issue. Based on the specific visual details the AI provided, Dane identifies the faint watermark on the war report as the overarching branch logo.
The upward-pointing delta.
Yes. The United States Space Force. The factory.
Which introduces a massive logical discrepancy.
Huge.
Because if the Space Force is just the factory that builds the hardware and trains the troops, why would a document explicitly titled a war report be stamped with their logo? I mean, in military bureaucracy, the issuing authority dictates the nature of the document. Shouldn't the combatant command the driver actually fighting the war be the one issuing a war report?
Exactly. And that exact discrepancy is what drives Dane to push the AI even harder.
He wants answers.
Yeah, because he knows military bureaucracy doesn't make branding mistakes lightly.
Yeah.
So he asks the AI about the involvement of military lawyers, the Judge Advocate General's Corps, or the JAGs.
Oh, the JAGs.
He wants to understand how legal jurisdiction is divided between the factory and the driver.
And the AI's response to that provides the linchpin for their entire theory.
Really? What did it say?
Well, it explains that the Space Force doesn't actually have its own separate, distinct JAG core.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it relies on Air Force lawyers who are just assigned to different space entities. But the critical detail here is that their specific assignment dictates their legal jurisdiction.
Okay, break that down.
So the JAGs assigned to the Space Command, remember, the driver, they handle operational war law. They deal with the rules of engagement on a battlefield, international space treaties, and targeting protocols.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following this.
Sure.
If Space Command lawyers handle the battlefield stuff, like, making sure we don't violate a UN treaty when intercepting a satellite, what do the lawyers at the Space Force factory do?
The JAGs assigned to the Space Force handle administrative law.
Administrative.
Yeah, they review civilian contracts, they deal with internal regulations, and crucially, they handle military justice and courts-martial.
Okay, wow. I think I need an analogy to wrap my head around why this matters so much to Dane.
It is a lot to take in.
It sounds a bit like corporate HR versus the legal team negotiating a merger.
That's a good way to look at it.
Like, if an HR rep is signing a document, it's about internal discipline, firing someone, or enforcing company policy. It's not about taking over a rival company.
Exactly.
So if a Space Force lawyer is running the show, it's an internal disciplinary action.
That is a perfect analogy. And that realization is Dane's massive aha moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you connect this administrative disciplinary jurisdiction right back to their baseline assumption that, a military intervention is coming to clean house of corrupt domestic actors, everything just clicks into place for them.
Because if Space Force lawyers handle courts-martial, Dane suddenly stops seeing the Space Force as just a branch that launches weather satellites.
Right.
He sees it as the exact purpose-built legal apparatus preparing to execute a massive domestic house cleaning.
Which, in his mind, explains the watermark discrepancy perfectly.
Exactly. It is a war report, but it's an internal administrative war. The Space Force factory is the entity building the legal framework to prosecute treasonous actors through military tribunals.
You can see how they use a very real bureaucratic structure to validate their worldview.
It's fascinating.
It is. And once they establish this legal foundation of impending tribunals, Dane and Kurt's conversation shifts gears dramatically.
Oh yeah, they go in a whole new direction.
Having figured out the who and the how of the legal structure, they move to this wild technological leap outlined in the final paragraph of the war report document.
Yeah, the document shifts focus to the financial system, specifically mentioning an orbitally anchored, asset-backed quantum financial system.
Quite a mouthful.
It is. Now pause. When I hear financial system, I picture a massive, heavily guarded server farm sitting underground in a desert somewhere, surrounded by concrete.
Right, like a bunker.
But Dane zeroes in on that phrase, orbitally anchored.
Yeah, and Dane theorizes that orbitally anchored is not a metaphor.
Wait.
He believes this new financial ledger, the banking system that will ostensibly replace the current global economy, will actually be housed in low Earth orbit.
I'm genuinely trying to picture the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
Why on Earth, or I guess why in space, would you put a bank in orbit?
Fair question.
From a pure engineering standpoint, how do you run global financial transactions from a satellite without the system just timing out from massive latency?
Well, the engineering argument Dane makes actually stems from the extreme physical vulnerability of our terrestrial infrastructure.
Vulnerability down here.
Right. Anything relying on physical fiber optic cables buried in the ground or servers sitting in buildings is subject to massive, instantaneous disruption.
That's true.
Terrestrial data centers require immense amounts of water for cooling, and they tap into highly stressed local power grids.
Oh, for sure.
Plus, they are vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses, EMPs that can fry copper wiring. They are vulnerable to natural disasters, severed undersea cables, and just plain physical sabotage.
So the argument is that the ground is simply too dangerous a place to keep the world's most critical data.
Exactly that. By moving the entire financial ledger to low Earth orbit, utilizing dense satellite mesh networks like Starlink, the system becomes completely decentralized.
Okay, I'm following.
Out in space, these satellites are powered endlessly by unobstructed solar energy. They don't rely on buried fiber optics. They communicate with each other via lasers in a vacuum, which actually transmits data faster than light moves through glass cables on Earth.
Oh, wow.
And most importantly, an orbital network is physically untouchable by earthbound chaos or bad actors.
So to ground this very sci-fi concept in reality, Dane brings up a surprisingly local proof of concept during the Zoom call.
Yeah, this is interesting.
He talks about a local shop owner he knows who runs a rural pantry business. And this local shop owner was so frustrated with the fragility of ground-based telecom that they ripped out all of their traditional broadband and fiber optic connections.
Just completely got rid of it.
Yeah. They replaced their entire commercial infrastructure with a flat satellite dish mounted on the roof of the pantry.
And we should note, this wasn't just to get better Wi-Fi for casual web browsing.
No.
This was to run a commercial business dependent on constant transaction processing.
Right, running credit cards all day.
Mm.
And Dane points out that when he runs a credit card at this rural pantry business, the transaction processes flawlessly and at lightning speed. The flat dish just automatically hands off the encrypted financial signal to whatever low Earth orbit satellite happens to be zooming overhead at that moment. The local shop owner doesn't experience latency or dropped connections.
It reminds me of the technological leapfrogging we saw in developing nations regarding telecom infrastructure.
Yes, that's exactly it. Years ago, developing nations looked at the staggering cost of digging thousands of miles of trenches to lay copper telephone wire.
It's incredibly expensive.
Right. So instead of building that vulnerable, expensive terrestrial network, they just completely skipped the landline phase and leapfrogged straight to building mobile cell towers.
Which was brilliant.
Totally. And to Dane, this rural pantry business proves that society is ready to leapfrog vulnerable underground internet cables altogether.
It's happening now.
The technology to run a secure, space-based financial node isn't some distant future state. It's literally sitting on the roof of a grocery store right now.
It's a very tangible, everyday anchor for a massive geopolitical theory.
It really is.
But, even if you accept the premise of an untouchable, unhackable financial system sitting in low Earth orbit, you run into a massive practical hurdle.
What's that?
Well, a banking system needs capital to function. Where does the physical money come from to capitalize and fund a completely new global economy?
And that question takes their logic right back to the military tribunals they were discussing earlier.
Exactly. The War Report document claims that this new space-based system will be funded by seizing the multi-trillion-dollar wealth pools of what they call the Crown Colonies.
The Crown Colonies.
Yeah. In Dane and Kurt's analytical framework, Crown Colonies is specific jargon for the old guard of the global financial system.
Okay.
They are referring to central banks, entrenched political elites, and deep state actors who they believe have been operating under foreign or corporate control for decades.
So the timeline in their heads looks like this. The Space Force JAGs use their administrative jurisdiction to run the tribunals. They prosecute these corrupt actors, and as part of that military justice, they confiscate their illicitly gained wealth.
Confiscate the wealth, yeah.
And then that seized wealth gets beamed up, digitally speaking, to serve as the hard collateral for the new orbitally anchored system.
You got it.
And according to the document, this newly freed wealth will be redistributed to fund a universal high income for regular people.
It represents a complete financial reset.
Wow. So what does this all mean?
Well, we need to look closer because Dane and Kurt don't just see this as moving money from one ledger to another. They see this as a fundamental, foundational shift in our legal reality.
How so?
The document promises that administrative sovereignty will return to the living individual.
The living individual.
Yeah.
That sounds less like a banking term and more like a deeply philosophical legal endpoint. I know this ties into sovereignty theories, but how do they actually define the difference between a living individual and whatever we are right now?
Well, the underlying mechanism here relies on the belief that the current legal system does not treat citizens as flesh and blood people with inherent natural rights.
Okay.
Instead, it treats them as corporate entities.
Oh, right.
And this is where Dane brings in outside validation to support the War Report. During the call, he receives a text message from a local contact who is also independently researching the Space Force data.
I remember this part. This local contact attempts to map the different branches of the U.S. military onto very specific historical frameworks of law.
Exactly. The local contact texts Dane a breakdown. They argue that the Army represents general law, which is basic federal administration.
Okay, Army is general law.
Right. Then the Marines, due to their naval origins, represent equity or admiralty law.
Admiralty law. Yeah.
And in sovereignty circles, admiralty law or maritime law is viewed as a contract-based corporate legal framework.
I've heard of this.
Yeah. The theory is that this framework was secretly applied to the land, effectively turning the country into a corporation.
Which means we are all...
Under this equity law, citizens are treated as liabilities or assets on a ledger, often pointing to things like birth certificates being traded as corporate bonds.
It's a system designed to manage inventory, not govern free people.
According to their theory, yes. But the text message argues that the Space Force represents common law.
Common law?
Yes. Common law is viewed as the traditional organic law of the land. It is based on natural rights, where sovereignty truly and irrevocably lies with the physical, living individual, not a corporate fiction.
So let me synthesize what they're claiming here, because it is wildly intricate architecture of thought.
It really is.
In their grand conclusion, Dane and Kurt decide that the Space Force wasn't just created to manage satellites or deal with orbital debris.
No, much bigger.
They believe it was intentionally established as a brand new, sterile entity, completely uncontaminated by the historical corporate structure of the terrestrial government.
A clean slate.
Exactly. Because it is a new branch operating in a new domain, it was designed specifically to bypass that corrupted equity law, freeze the assets of the deep state through courts-martial, and restore organic common law to the people.
It is a breathtakingly comprehensive narrative.
It really covers everything.
And if we step back from the specific claims about tribunals and space banks and just look at the psychology of what Dane and Kurt are doing, it is a fascinating case study in modern sense-making.
Sense-making? How so?
Well, when people experience a profound systemic breakdown in trust regarding traditional institutions, whether they are looking at the integrity of a local county election or the stability of the global financial system, they don't just throw their hands up and accept the chaos.
Right, they look for answers.
They look for order. And today, they use incredibly powerful modern tools like AI to seek out hidden patterns in that chaos.
Yeah.
They use these tools to validate their deep-seated assumptions, and they build these tightly woven frameworks to make sense of a world that feels completely out of control.
They will literally look all the way to outer space to find a narrative of justice and stability.
Exactly.
And here's the thing that really stuck with me after diving into their conversation.
What's that?
Regardless of whether you agree with the political and legal theories Dane and Kurt constructed around this war report, they actually stumble onto a technological concept that is keeping tech CEOs and cybersecurity experts awake at night.
Oh, you're referring to the vulnerability of the terrestrial data center.
Yes, exactly. The core physical mechanism they identified, the extreme fragility of our ground-based infrastructure, is a massive, very real concern in the tech industry right now.
It really is.
I mean, between the unprecedented escalating stress on local power grids driven by AI processing, the increasing frequency of natural disasters flooding server farms, and the physical security risks to undersea cables, the ground beneath our feet is becoming an increasingly risky place to store the world's most critical data.
It's not as safe as we think.
No. The vulnerability of those fiber optic networks isn't a conspiracy theory. It is a documented engineering reality.
It highlights a genuine structural weakness in how modern society operates. The idea of moving critical data to a more secure, decentralized environment is an active area of research and development.
Which leaves you, the listener, with something pretty profound to ponder on your own.
Definitely.
Next time you step outside and look up at the night sky, ask yourself, could the ultimate safe haven for our digital footprint, our financial ledgers, and our global infrastructure actually be in low Earth orbit?
It's a great question.
Could that faint, blurry Space Force watermark on a mysterious document actually be pointing toward the inevitable necessary future of how human data survives?
Wow.
It is a question that blurs the line between fringe internet theory and tomorrow's very real engineering solutions.
It forces us to consider how fragile our terrestrial systems really are and where we might have to go to secure them.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the war report. Keep questioning, keep looking closer at the details, and we will catch you next time.
All right, you've been listening to the Character-Driven Life and Leadership Podcast with Coach Dane, training and coaching leaders to grow with character first. Leadership isn't about the titles, it's about trust. And when you lead with character, your people skills and technical skills follow, and your leadership impact multiplies. Subscribe, share, and connect with me here at lmdc.us to keep growing you in leadership and life with character at the foundation. Until next time, love, live, lead, and trike on.